Hi everyone, and welcome to Stormcrow's Ghostly Tales. Today's tale of a Highlander. And now we all know that Highlanders are a tough breed, to say the least. We also know that Highlanders enjoy sheep farming, cattle farming, crop farming, etc. One of these farmers, old Jock, was an actual crofter, and it was his job to go out onto the moors and hillsides around his croft and look after the sheep. And he would always take his faithful sheep dog with him, his border collie. Now, he had a loving wife. Her name was Margaret. Although they never had children, they did have a very special relationship, and they were very much deeply in love. And she would always cook for him upon his return. Sadly, however, his wife died and was buried in the local village. Now, old Jock, he decided in his infinite wisdom to carry on doing the crofting, but he was getting on in years, and it was starting to become too much for him. The laird of the land turned around and said to him that it would probably be best if he retired, and he was allowed to stay on in the croft that he had shared with his wife. Sadly, however, the laird said that the collie would have to go to someone else, as it was a valuable dog. Problem was, the collie took it upon itself not to work for anyone else other than old Jock, and eventually the laird had to give up and said to old Jock that he could look after the collie. Old Jock was ecstatic at this, and they actually used to go off into the hillsides and moorland around on daily walks. It was on one of these walks that the collie decided to run on ahead. Then all of a sudden its ears went up and it flew off into the distance. Now, old Jock was not able to keep up with the collie and sadly lost sight of it. He searched for over an hour, and eventually he gave up and returned to his croft, fearing that the collie had run off and got lost, or worse yet, got injured. And he decided that he would actually go looking for the collie at some point in the next again day with help from some of the locals. Then he was settling down and he heard scratching at the door. He got up, answered the door, and there was the collie. Came in, had its meal, settled down in front of the fire, and duly fell asleep. A few days later, they were again at the same part where the collie had dashed off the last time, and the collie done the exact same thing. Ears go up, and off it goes into the distance. This happened time after time. Eventually, old Jock decided that he would actually go and see where the dog was going. So once the dog dashed off, he made his way very slowly along the path. As he was cresting the brow of a hill, in the distance he could see the collie with a young woman, and they seemed to be getting on great together. They were playing, they were laughing, there was fun and wagging of the tail, and the collie was having a really good time. As he drew closer to speak to the woman and ask who she was, he recognised her. It was actually his wife. He about turned and wandered back to the croft, settled down knowing that his border collie was having fun with his deceased wife. Eventually the dog returned. Sadly, however, poor Jock became unwell, and eventually he too passed on, and he was actually buried beside his wife in the local cemetery. After a few days, the collie stopped eating, started whining, and eventually it too passed on. Now, normally dogs are not buried in graveyards, especially on consecrated ground. But in this case, the collie was cremated and the ashes were put into the ground beside its mistress and its master. Then something strange happened. About 3 months later, visitors to the village were out walking on the moors when they came across a young couple with a border collie. They reported back to the village inn where they were staying that they had met a lovely young couple on their walk with a border collie, and all of them were so friendly in explaining to them where they were and things to be able to go and see that they would like to thank the couple by buying them a meal. Now, the villagers thought it was a bit strange because the description that was given, there was no young couple of that description staying in the village. Eventually, report after report came back of this lovely young couple on this path up in the hillside, giving directions to the various beauty spots that the barkeep decided to go and investigate. Upon investigation, he actually discovered that it was the old crofter and his wife and their border collie still walking the same path that they had walked for many a year through the moorlands and hills of the Highlands. Now, the old innkeeper decided to leave them in peace. He did notice, however, that the couple in question did look very much in love, and more importantly, they looked like they were having the time of their life, even though they were all deceased. So when you visit the Highlands, please be on the lookout for a lovely young couple wandering through the moorlands. If you stop and talk to them, make sure you bend down and pat their border collie.